What if the silence you fear is the key to becoming the man you were meant to be? The world taught you to fear being unseen. What if that's exactly where your strength is hiding? You don't need to be louder. You need to be still enough to finally hear yourself. You wake up and there's nothing. No texts, no missed calls, no plans lighting up your screen, just silence. At first, maybe it feels calm, peaceful even. But then, something else creeps in. A tightness in your chest, a dull ache that sits just under the surface. You don't miss people. You miss proof that you matter to someone. That's when it hits, that whisper of doubt. Why isn't anyone reaching out? Did I mess something up? Am I being forgotten? Let's be honest. That feeling is one most men know too well, and we hate it. Because somewhere along the way, we were taught that silence equals failure. That if no one's texting, if your calendar's empty, if your phone is quiet, it must mean something's wrong. So what do? We reach for our phones. We scroll, refresh, check messages that aren't coming. Maybe we text someone we probably shouldn't, not out of genuine connection, but because we're desperate to escape that void. It's not just boredom, it's fear. Because for most men, stillness doesn't feel like peace, it feels like rejection. But here's the question no one asks. What if the silence isn't punishment? What if it's opportunity? You see, the world taught you to fear being alone. It made you believe your worth is tied to your visibility. How many people are calling, commenting, or reacting to your life? But real growth? It doesn't show up with likes and notifications. It starts in the quiet. Think about it. When was the last time you sat in that stillness and didn't run? No music, no scrolling, no messages to distract you, just you. That's rare, and it's powerful. Because the man who can sit in his own silence, who doesn't flinch when the world stops watching, that man is building something deeper, something the outside world can't take away. And yeah, it's uncomfortable at first. That's why most men avoid it. Because when you strip away the noise, you're left face to face with yourself, the unfiltered version, the one who's been buried under performance, pressure, and the need to prove. But here's the twist. The silence doesn't break you. It introduces you to the man you've ignored. Not the one who constantly needs approval, but the one who knows his own value, even when no one's clapping. That's where it begins. Not with more hustle, not with more followers, but with one choice: to stop running from the quiet and finally lean into it. Because the truth is, when a man learns to be still, truly still, he doesn't disappear. He becomes unforgettable. He's not the loudest voice in the room, but his presence carries weight. He doesn't chase validation. He doesn't beg to be seen. He simply is. And that kind of man, he doesn't need to be chosen. He already chose himself. So if you're waking up today in silence, don't panic. Don't rush to fill it. Pause. Breathe. Listen. That silence, it's not your weakness. It's your weapon. And this might just be the first day you start to hear yourself again. Let's be real. Most men aren't afraid of being alone. They're afraid of what solitude reveals. See, we talk a lot about loneliness, like it's some curse to avoid, but very few of us talk about what really happens when the noise stops. When you're not in a relationship, when there's no one to impress, no one to text back, no goal to chase, no screen lighting up your face, just you and your thoughts, and that's where it gets hard. Because in that silence, the truth shows up, raw and unfiltered. The regrets, the missed chances, the promises you made to yourself and didn't keep. That relationship you never healed from. That job you didn't take. That version of you that you swore you'd become, but somehow abandoned along the way. It's all there. And suddenly, there's nowhere left to hide. This is why so many men stay moving. They bounce from one relationship to the next, from one project to another, from one distraction to a dozen more. Not because they're building something, but because they're running from something. Running from silence. Because silence strips away the performance. It tears off the mask. And what's left behind isn't always pretty. It's uncomfortable. It's brutal. It echoes every fear you've tried to bury. You're not enough. You'll always be forgotten. Nothing you do really matters. But here's the truth they don't tell you. If you stay in that silence, if you don't run, something shifts. You start to realize you're still here. You're still breathing. You're still capable. And those dark thoughts, they're not you. They're just old stories, old scripts, echoes from the past that have played on repeat for too long. You don't have to believe them anymore. You don't have to open the door when they knock. That's when real clarity begins. Not with fireworks, not with a big moment, but with a quiet realization. You're not your failures. You're not your past. You're not the people who left. You're the man who stayed. You stayed through the discomfort. You stayed when everything told you to run. You faced the fire and didn't look away. That's rare. That's powerful. Because true strength isn't built in front of an audience. It's built when no one's watching. Not in the gym, not in a podcast, not in a 5 a.m. motivational reel. It's built in stillness. The moment you decide, I'm worth facing, I'm worth fighting for. So you sit, you breathe, you let the silence scream. You let it tear through the illusions, and still, you don't move. And in that stillness, something is born. A voice, not loud, but strong. Not polished, but real. And when you finally move again, you move with weight. Your words hit deeper. Your presence speaks louder. Not because you've changed the world, but because you finally come home to yourself. That's the power of facing solitude. That's what makes you unshakable. It's not easy, it's not flashy, but it's real, and it's yours. So if you're sitting in the quiet right now, wondering what it means, wondering if you're lost, maybe you're not. Maybe for the first time in a long time, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Not running, not performing, just being. And that's more than enough. You may not be addicted to alcohol, drugs, or gambling, but let me ask you this. When you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing you do? Do you reach for your phone, hoping for a message, a like, a little red notification bubble that tells you someone's thinking about you? If so, you might be dealing with something just as powerful and far more invisible, a quiet addiction to approval. And the thing about this addiction is that nobody warns you. There's no rehab for it, no intervention. It doesn't ruin your body overnight, but it eats away at your soul. You start shaping your identity around what people think of you. You smile when you want to scream. You say yes when every part of you is screaming no. You avoid conflict, not because you're at peace, but because you fear being disliked. Slowly, you trade authenticity for applause. And that trade, it never pays what it promises. Because the more you seek approval, the more you shrink. You become the version of yourself that's easiest to digest, easiest to like, easiest to ignore. And over time, you're no longer living, you're performing. Your life becomes a stage, your smile becomes a mask, and your voice, the real one, gets quieter. You lose touch with who you are because you're too busy being who they want you to be. And what's worse is that it feels normal. Society praises likability, being agreeable, being pleasant. But what if I told you that being liked isn't the same as being respected? What if I told you that approval is a drug, and most of us are high on it without knowing? But here's the good news. You can detox. You can reclaim your mind, your time, your truth. It starts by doing the hardest thing in the world today, being honest. You stop checking your phone every 10 minutes. You stop asking, will they like me if I say this? And start asking, do I believe in what I'm about to say? That one shift changes everything. Because when you start living from alignment instead of performance, people will notice. Your presence will feel different. Not because you're louder, but because you're rooted. You won't need the spotlight. You'll carry your own light. And yes, it's uncomfortable at first. The silence, the distance, the internal panic that whispers, what if they don't like me anymore? But here's the truth. They were never really seeing you anyway. They were seeing the version of you that was crafted to make them comfortable. And that version, it wasn't built to last. But you, the real you, the one with opinions, standards, boundaries, truth, that man is unforgettable. You won't need to text to stay relevant. You won't laugh at jokes that aren't funny. You won't waste time explaining yourself to people who never cared to understand. Because the moment you stop chasing approval, you stop being invisible. You begin to stand out, not by shouting louder, but by standing firmer. And the peace that comes with that, it's worth everything you'll have to let go of. Because what you gain is self-respect, clarity, confidence. Not fake confidence, not Instagram highlight confidence, but the real kind. The kind that lets you walk into a room and not care who's watching. Because you're not there to perform. You're there to exist, to lead, to live. So ask yourself right now, am I doing this to be liked, or am I doing it because it's true to me? Your answer to that question might just be the start of your freedom. Solitude. It's a word most people confuse with loneliness. But solitude isn't about being cut off from the world. It's about coming back to yourself. It's the difference between running away from people and walking away from noise. See, we live in a world that's constantly loud. Loud with opinions, loud with expectations, loud with distractions. You're told what success should look like, who you should be, what you should want. You're measured by likes, compared through highlights, and judged by strangers who don't even know your story. And in all that noise, something dangerous happens. You stop hearing your own voice. That's why solitude matters. Because when you step back, when you stop reacting, stop performing, stop proving, you finally create space to listen. And not to the world, but to yourself. That's when real clarity begins. In solitude, you start noticing the small things. You recognize how much of your life has been shaped by what others expect, not what you truly desire. You begin to question goals that once felt important. Was that dream really mine? Or did I inherit it from someone else's idea of success? You see how often you said yes just to fit in. How many friendships felt shallow, but you kept them anyway. How you kept pushing toward a lifestyle that never felt like home. And suddenly, you don't feel lost anymore. You feel awakened. Because now, for the first time in a long time, you're asking better questions. What actually brings me peace? What fuels me and what drains me? See, who do I become around certain people, and do I like that version of me? Solitude gives you space to explore these questions without pressure to answer quickly, without the need to package your thoughts for someone else's approval. It's just you and the truth. And the truth is, a lot of what you've been tolerating, you no longer have to. The connections that don't serve you, the expectations that exhaust you, the old habits that keep you small, you start letting them go. Not out of anger, not from bitterness, but from clarity. You don't argue, you don't explain, you simply choose differently. And when that happens, when your choices align with who you really are, you become dangerous in the best way possible. You're no longer reactive, you're intentional. You stop waking up to survive the day and start waking up with direction. Your routines reflect your values. Your circle reflects your standards. Your life begins to feel like it fits, not because it's perfect, but because it's finally yours. That's the power of solitude. It burns away what's not you. It strips off the roles you were never meant to play. And it leaves behind something solid, a man who knows who he is, even when no one's watching. That man doesn't chase. He doesn't explain himself to people who never cared to understand him in the first place. He's not easily manipulated. He's not easily swayed. He's centered. He's grounded. And that kind of man, he's hard to ignore because he doesn't need attention. He carries presence. He doesn't talk to impress. He speaks when it matters. He's not driven by noise. He's led by conviction. So if your life feels quiet right now, don't panic. That silence isn't emptiness. It's an invitation. Your soul is asking you to slow down, to listen, not to what others want from you, but to what's been buried under years of distraction. Because when you finally hear it, your voice, your truth, you don't go back. You don't unsee. You don't unlearn. You just move forward, this time with clarity, with peace, with power. Solitude doesn't make you weaker. It makes you wiser. And in a world that never stops talking, being a man who can walk through stillness and come out stronger on the other side, that's rare. That's leadership, freedom. There comes a point in a man's life when he stops asking to be chosen. He stops waiting for permission. He stops adjusting himself to fit into rooms that never saw his value in the first place. Instead, he makes a decision, a quiet, steady, and life-altering decision, to choose himself. That's not weakness. That's not giving up. That's the beginning of becoming. See, the man who chooses stillness isn't broken. He's rebuilding. He's not hiding from the world. He's reconnecting with the part of him the world tried to silence. And when he does that, when he steps back from the noise, takes off the mask, and refuses to perform, something powerful happens. He becomes unshakable. He no longer needs validation to feel valuable. He doesn't beg to be seen, because his presence speaks before he even opens his mouth. He's not desperate for attention, because his energy doesn't ask, it declares. And that kind of man, he's hard to ignore, because in a world full of people chasing more followers, more applause, more noise, he's the one walking the other direction. The man who no longer proves is the one who finally owns. And make no mistake, this isn't about ego. It's about alignment. You start living in a way that reflects who you actually are, not who you think people want you to be. You stop apologizing for your boundaries. You stop lowering your standards just to belong. And you stop living on autopilot, trying to impress people who were never really paying attention. That's when everything starts to change. Not because of some magic trick, but because you're finally leading from the inside out. You're no longer being pulled by what's popular. You're moved by what's real. That's the shift. That's the quiet kind of power most people never find, because they're too busy chasing everything outside of themselves. But here's the truth. The moment you stop needing to prove something is the exact moment you become undeniable. So let me ask you, what are you still performing for? Who are you still trying to impress? And most importantly, what would it look like to finally just be you? Not the version you've curated, not the version that gets applause, but the version that's honest, grounded, and whole. That's the real freedom. Not running away, but returning home to yourself. So here's a simple but powerful action step. Write this down somewhere you'll see it often. I choose solitude to build my strength. Not because it sounds cool, but because you're done hiding. You're done chasing. You're done playing small. You're ready to become. And becoming doesn't require a stage. It requires stillness. So today, choose one distraction to let go of. Just one thing you've been holding on to that keeps you from hearing your own voice. It could be a toxic habit, a pointless scroll, a need to be liked. Let it go. Because the man who no longer performs, the man who no longer proves, the man who no longer needs the world to validate his worth, he's not empty. He's full of something deeper, something that can't be bought, broken, or ignored. That's the man the world remembers, not because he was loud, but because he was real.